Good morning, Year 3. It's Mrs. Hamer here with your reading for today. Our I can is I can find and copy a word which means the same. Today we're going to look at a famous picture book called The Tunnel by Anthony Brown. This is actually a book that I looked at when I was actually at university. So obviously, as you'll know, I trained to be a teacher at university, and as part of our English lessons we were introduced to different books that are sort of classic books to use in schools, and this was one of the books that I can remember one of my lecturers showing me. Now, even though it's a picture book, there are actually sentences in this book, but some of the pages are just purely pictures, so we have to kind of infer what's happening. But some of them do have some sentences, so there are going to be some words that we will need to read today. I've picked out 5 words from the text: alike, soundly, impatient, fault, and clearing. And I have 5 definitions. You'll be familiar with this activity because it's one that we often do in school for our vocab lab. What I'd like you to do is obviously see if you can match them up. I'll read out the definitions for you as well. So we've got quickly irritated, similar to each other, an open space in a forest, deeply and without disturbance, responsibility for an accident or misfortune. What I want you to do now is either sort them yourself, or if you've got an adult in the room, you can pause the video now and have a discussion about these words and see if you can match them up correctly. Let's see how you got on then. So alike means similar to each other. So we have to see in the book whether there are some characters that are alike, or maybe some characters that aren't alike. Soundly means deeply and without disturbance. Impatient, quickly irritated, so maybe one of the characters in the book today is going to become impatient, they're going to become irritated. Fault is a responsibility for an accident or a misfortune. So I know sometimes at home when I was your age, sometimes I would be at fault for something being broken, or sometimes it would be my brother, and often what my brother would do he would try and put the fault on me, try and blame me, make me responsible for the accident, when in fact actually it was him. Clearing in the book is going to be an open space in a forest. So those are some of the words that we're going to come across today in our reading. So we're going to read The Tunnel together, and I've put a PDF version of the PowerPoint for you, which has got each page of the book. Now, you may wish now to read that independently, or read it with an adult as a paired read or a shared read. If obviously you're on your own and you would like somebody else to read with you, you can carry on this video and read with me. The Tunnel by Anthony Brown. And as we can see in this picture, there seems to be a girl. I'm thinking a girl because it looks like it's a dress or a skirt. She's crawling through a tunnel. She's left a book behind her. Once upon a time, there lived a sister and brother who were not at all alike. We looked at that word, didn't we, in our vocab lab. And alike meant to be similar, but it said they're not at all alike. So the brother and sister are not like each other at all. In every way, they were different. The sister stayed inside on her own, reading and dreaming. Maybe this might be the book from the front cover. The brother played outside with his friends, laughing and shouting, throwing and kicking, roughing and tumbling. We can see him there with his friends playing football. At night, he slept soundly in his room. We looked at that word soundly in our vocab lab. It meant to sleep deeply with no disturbance. So he always has a good night's sleep every night. He's never disturbed. But she, that's referring to the sister, would lie awake, listening to the noises of the night. Sometimes he crept into her room to frighten her, for he knew that she was afraid of the dark. We can see here on the next page, she's still awake. he's creeping in, and not only is he just creeping in, he's wearing a mask, isn't he, to try and scare her. I wonder if you've ever done that to your brothers or sisters, or if your brothers or sisters have done that to you. I don't think it's a very nice thing to do, is it? Whenever they were together, they fought and argued noisily all the time. I'd like to think that that isn't the case with your siblings, your brothers and sisters. Obviously, I know looking back at my um, childhood, me and my brother would argue and fight sometimes, but it was more of a rarity. We wouldn't do it all the time. One morning, their mother grew impatient with them. Impatient was a word, wasn't it, from our vocab lab, and it meant to be irritated. So the mom often grew impatient. She was irritated by them, probably because they fought and were noisy all the time. And I'd imagine that this is Mum's hand, telling them to go outside. Out you go together, she said, and try to be nice to each other just for once, and be back in time for lunch. But the boy didn't want his little sister with him. Ah, she's still carrying that book, isn't she? And he's got that football. So they've got their little hobbies and interests with them. Let's see what happens. They went to a piece of waste ground. Why did you have to come? He moaned. It's not my fault, she said. I didn't want to come to this awful place. It scares me. Oh, you baby, said her brother. You're frightened of everything. He went off to explore. So here they are. She's sat down reading. He's got his book. He's probably a little bit bored, isn't he? Because his friends aren't with him. His sister doesn't like playing football. Hey, come here, he yelled a little while later. She walked over to him. Look, he said, a tunnel. Come on, let's see what's at the other end. No, well, you mustn't, she said. There might be witches or goblins or anything down there. Obviously, she likes reading, doesn't she? And she reads a lot of books. And these are fictional characters that would appear in her stories. She's obviously read a lot of stories with witches and goblins, and she thinks they might be down there. Don't be so wet, said her brother. That's kid stuff. We often use the word wet to show that we aren't dry. Like if we've been out in the rain and we get very wet. But wet can be used as an adjective to describe somebody who is silly, like being a bit silly, being like scared. That's what her brother thinks of her, which isn't very nice. And you shouldn't really call people wet. We have to be back by lunchtime, she said. So here we go. Here he is, he's left his football outside and he's crawled into the tunnel and she's outside. Can you predict if you think she'll go in? If you remember back to the front cover, we saw, didn't we, a book on the outside and some feet, and it looked like a skirt, but here we can see it was probably her red coat, so I think she probably will go in and follow her brother. His sister was frightened of the tunnel, and so she waited for him to come out again. She waited and waited, but he did not come. She was close to tears. What could she do? She had to follow him into the tunnel. And there you go, there's the picture from the front cover. I wonder what's going to happen next. You could pause the video now and have a go at predicting what you think might happen in the story. Let's see what happens. The tunnel was dark and damp and slimy and scary. At the other end, she found herself in a quiet wood. There was no sign of her brother, but the wood soon turned into a dark forest. She thought about wolves and giants and witches and wanted to turn back, but she could not, for what would become of her brother if she did? By now she was very frightened, and she began to run faster and faster. Here we can see she's getting deeper into the forest. We can see a little campfire. We can see an axe here piled up. We can see that this has kind of been made maybe as a door. If you look really closely at the tree, can you see this looks like a thumb? and then a piece of rope hanging down. This looks like it could be a head of a snake. This looks like it's like a dragon eye here. This looks like a weapon. I wonder if you've spotted anything else. In the live session later on, you could share maybe some of the other things that you spotted in this picture. We've got another picture now. Look at all these trees. You look really close in the detail. Look. It's like a bear running through. A gravestone. There's something that's holding up the tree. What can we see here? A wolf. A lot of these are characters in fairy tales, aren't they? We can think of the big bad wolf in the forest when Little Red Riding Hood is going through the wood. Interestingly, have we noticed what colour coat she has? So a lot of the things in this story are inspired by fairy tales. This might be a little cottage. Often in fairy tales there are cottages like Hansel and Gretel and the Little Red Riding Hood. Just when she knew she could run no further, she came to a clearing. There was a figure, still as stone. It was her brother. "Oh no," she sobbed. "I'm too late." But brother's been turned into a statue. What do you think's going to happen now? Let's find out. She threw her arms around the cold, hard form and wept. Very slowly, the figure began to change colour, becoming softer and warmer. It's a bit like what happens in Frozen, isn't it? When Anna turns to ice and Elsa gives her a hug. Or is it the other way around now? I might have mixed the two characters up now. But one of them definitely becomes frozen as ice. And the other sister obviously hugs them. And they turn from not being ice anymore. Then little by little, it began to move. Her brother was there. "Rose, I knew you'd come," he said. They ran back, through the forest, through the wood, into the tunnel, and out again, together. When they reached home, their mother was setting the table. "Hello," she said. "You two seem very quiet. Is everything all right?" Rose smiled at her brother, and Jack smiled back. Because usually they'd often fight, wouldn't they, and argue, and it'd often be very noisy. But they've just experienced something together, haven't they? And it's brought them together. I hope you enjoyed that picture book, and looking in particular at the pictures and looking at all the detail that we spotted in the trees. Time for a quick quiz now. Okay, so obviously get yourself a piece of paper and a pencil ready. I'll read out the 5 questions, and then obviously I'll get you to pause the video so that you can retrieve the information from the text. Think carefully about the question stems and what sort of answers you need to retrieve. So a who question, what sort of answer do you need to retrieve? That's right, a name of a person. What about a when question? That's right, a time. And what about a where question? That's right, a place. So question 1, what did the sister like to do? What did the sister like to do? Question 2, what did the brother like to do? Question 3, who didn't sleep well at night? Question 4, when did the children need to be back for? So when did they need to be home? And question 5, where did the children go? Pause the video now to retrieve your answers and join me back for the answers. Let's see how well you did. So what did the sister like to do? She liked to read stories, didn't she? She often had a book in her hand. What did the brother like to do? He liked to play outside with his friends. You might have put about playing football. You might have put obviously some of the words from the text, such as shouting, laughing, roughing. Okay, I'll accept any of those. Who didn't sleep well at night? It was the sister who didn't sleep well at night. She often would stay up listening to the noises. When did the children need to be back for? Their mum said they needed to be back for lunch. And where did the children go to? They went to a piece of wasteland. I was looking for obviously the place they went to before the tunnel, but obviously if you've put through a tunnel into a wood, into a forest, I'll accept that answer as well. So going back to where I can find and copy a word which means the same. And we're going to think, I'm going to introduce you to a word which means that words are the same. But before we do that, we're going to be spending a lot of time using a thesaurus, whether that might be an online one, whether that might be one that you have in the classroom or at home, or whether that might be the ones I've screenshot and added onto Teams. But before we look at our activities, I want us to think, what is a thesaurus and what do we use it for? A thesaurus is a book which lists words with their synonyms, and that means words that are in the same. Just like a dictionary, it is in alphabetical order. So if I was looking for a synonym for bad, I'd look at the beginning of the thesaurus and look under the B's for the word bad, and there would be a list of synonyms that meant bad. What do we use it for? Well, we might use a thesaurus when we are writing to think of better words, because obviously now that we're in year 3, we don't want to be using words like bad and good. We want to be using better words, more complex words. So we might use a thesaurus to find better words when we are writing. So when you look at a thesaurus, this is how the thesauruses, the children's thesauruses, look like inside with the ones that we have at school. And the ones that I've put onto Teams for some of you to help you will look exactly like this. So you'll start off by having the word. Then next to the word, it will tell you its word class. So that might be adjective, noun, verb, adverb. So the word small is an adjective. It's a word that is used to describe something. Then you'll have a list of synonyms. So all these words here are synonyms for small. They mean small. So compact, little, minute, tiny, miniature, mean, measly, stingy, minor, slight, unimportant. And we have some exemplar sentences where the word small is used, because some of these synonyms are more appropriate for certain sentences. For example, if you were to say that you had a small problem, oh, I've got a small problem, I've got a slight problem, Mrs. Homer. These words are the most suitable ones. You wouldn't say to somebody, oh, I have a compact problem. So you have to think carefully when you are using synonyms and making sure you're choosing the right one. Sometimes in a thesaurus, you also have the antonym, which is the word that means the opposite. So the opposite of small is big. So how does that fit into our activity today? We're going to be completing some word webs, where you put a word in the middle of the web and then you put synonyms on the outside. So thinking back to small, which we've just looked at, a synonym for small is tiny. Thinking back to the list that we looked at earlier, another word that is a synonym for small is minute. So I'm going to write minute and add that into our word web. Can you remember any others? Little, miniature. You'll continue creating your word web so that you have got all the synonyms that you can think of or find that mean the word small. Now you might find that you haven't got enough circles and you need more, or you might find that you can't find enough synonyms, okay? Don't worry if you can't fill the whole word web. So eventually your word web will look like this. What I want you to do for your task is I want you to choose a word from the text. So from the tunnel story that we have read today. If you're struggling of selecting maybe some words that you'll be able to find synonyms for, on Teams, the scaffold sheet is there for you, which has got a suggested list of words for you to use. And I want you to create at least 3 word webs. I want you to use then either an online thesaurus, either a thesaurus if you've got one at home, because I know some of you might have dictionaries and thesauruses at home, or you can use the thesaurus sheets which are on Teams, and I've put for you a little screenshot for each of the suggested words. So obviously if you're choosing to use the thesaurus sheets on Teams, you'll probably end up using them words from the scaffold sheet as well. Okay, and then I want you to create a word web of synonyms. Stretch activity, and that is on the word web sheet as well, which is on Teams, is to rewrite the sentence from the text using appropriate synonym. So for example, if in the text it said that Rose was a small girl, we wouldn't replace that with minor. You wouldn't say Rose is a minor girl. You probably wouldn't say that Rose is a compact girl. You'd use some appropriate synonyms. So you'd say Rose is a little girl. Rose is a tiny girl. So that's an extra challenge for you, is to rewrite the sentence from the text, selecting the most appropriate synonym. And as with all of our reading lessons, we would like you to upload that onto Teams so that we can see and obviously give you some feedback.